Wonder of the Wasteland, Chapter 24, Part 3. Did you drive the ornery mules? Did I? Adam's query was a grim assertion. Every day for 3 months. You remember old Butch, that gray devil of a mule? Well, Dismukes, the time came when he knew me. If I even picked up the long bullwhip, old Butch would scream and run to lay his head on me. And you saw the young driver through his trouble? That I did, and it was more trouble than he told us then. The boss, Carrick's head, was low down and cunning. He's got smitten with the lad's wife, a pretty girl, but frail in health. He kept Carrick's own jobs away from home, and we didn't meet the lad any too soon. Huh, that's got a familiar sound to me, declared Dismukes. Wansfeld, what'd you do to that low-down boss? Go on with your story, replied Adam. Ah, that's so. I want to make 2 palms wells before dark. Wansfeld like a horned toad on the desert. I changed my outside at Frisco. Alas, I imagined all within blood, mind, soul had changed. I went to Denver and St. Louis and looked at the sights. Not much disappointed, because my time seemed far ahead. Then I went to my old home. There I had my first jar. Folks were all dead, not a relation living. Could not even find my mother's grave. No one remembered me, and I couldn't find anyone I ever knew. The village had grown into a town. My old home was gone. The picture of it, the little gray cottage, the vines and orchard, lived in my mind. I found the place, all gone. 3 new houses were there. 40 years is a long time. I didn't build the church or set out a park for the village of my boyhood. Then I went on to Chicago, Philadelphia, New York. Stayed long in New York. At first it fascinated me. I felt I wanted to see it out of curiosity. I was looking for some place, something I expected. But I never saw it. The hotels, the theaters, saloons, gambling hells, and worse, the operas and parks and churches and the wonderful stores, I saw them all. Men and women like ants rushing to and fro. No rest, no sleep, no quiet, no peace. I met people, few good but most bad. And in some hotels and places I got to be well known. I got to have a name for throwing gold around. Men of business sought my acquaintance, took me to dinners, made much of me, and all to get me to invest in their schemes. Women? Oh, the women were my second disappointment. Wansfeld women are like desert mirages, beautiful women in silks and satins, diamonds blazing on bare necks and arms. They made eyes at me and talked soft and sweet and flattered me and praised me and threw themselves at me. All because they thought I had stacks and rolls and bags of gold. Never a woman did I meet who liked me, who had any thought to hear my story, to learn my hope. Never a kind whisper, never any keen eye that saw through my outside. Well, I wasn't seeing and finding the life I'd hoped for. That New York is as near hell as I ever got. I saw men with quiet faces and women who seemed happy, but only in the passing crowds. I never got to meet any of them. They had their homes and their troubles and their happiness. I figured, and they were not looking for anyone to fleece. It was my habit to get into a crowd and watch, for I come to believe the mass of busy working ordinary people were good. Maybe if I'd somehow made acquaintance with a few of them, it'd have been better. But that wasn't seeing life. I thought I knew what I wanted. All my yearnings and dreams seemed to pall on me. Where was the joy, Wansfeld? The only joy I had was in finding some poor beggar or bootblack or poor family and giving them gold. The great city was full of them, and I gave away thousands of dollars. God knows that was some good. And now I see if I could have stuck it out living among such people, I might have been of some use in the world. But man, living was not possible in New York. All night the hotels roared. All night the streets hummed and changed. There was as many people rushing around by night as by day and different from each other like bats and hawks. I got restless and I got half sick. I couldn't sleep. I seemed to suffocate for fresh air. I wanted room to breathe. When I looked up at night, I couldn't see the stars. Think of that for a desert man. At last, I knew I couldn't find what I wanted in New York, and I couldn't hunt any longer there. I had to leave. My plans called for going abroad. Then came a strange feeling that I must have had all the time but didn't marvel at. The West called me back. I seemed to want the Middle West, where I'd planned to buy the green farm. But you know, I'm a man who sticks to his mind when it's made up. There were London, Paris, Rome I'd dreamed about and had planned to see. Well, I had a hell of a fight with something in myself before I could get on that ship. Right off then, I got seasick. Once felt the bite of a rattlesnake never made me half as sick as that dirty, gray, windy sea. The trip across was a nightmare. London was a dreary place, as big as the Mojave and full of queer, fishy-eyed people whom I couldn't understand, but I liked their slow, easy-going ways. Then Paris once felt that Paris was a wonderful, glittering, beautiful city, and if a city had been a place for me, Paris would have been it. But I was lost. I couldn't speak French. I couldn't learn a word. My tongue refused to twist around their queer words all the same. I saw what I'd set out to see. Once felt if a man fights to spare for the women of the world, he'll get licked in Paris. And the reason is there you see the same thing in the homely, good, and virtuous little wives as you see in those terrible, fascinating, dazzling actresses. What that something is, I couldn't guess, but you, like all French women, they're gay and happy and square. If I applied the truth of this desert to these French women, I'd say the something so fascinating in them is that the race is petering out and the women are dying game. From Paris, I went to Rome, and there a queer state of mind came to me. I could look at temples and old ruins without even seeing them, with my mind on my own country. All this travel idea, seeing and learning and doing, changed so that it was hateful. I cut out Egypt, and I can't remember much of India and Japan. But when I got on ship bound for Frisco, I couldn't see anything for a different reason, and that was tears. I'd come far to find joy of life, and now wept tears of joy because I was homeward bound. It was a great and splendid feeling. The Pacific is not like the Atlantic. It's vast and smooth and peaceful, with swells like the mile-long ridges of the desert. I didn't get seasick, and on the voyage I got some rest. Maybe the sea is like the desert. Anyway, it calmed me, and I could think clear once more. As I walked the deck by day or hung over the rail by night, my yearnings and dreams come back. When I reached Frisco, I'd take train for the Middle West, and somewhere I'd buy the green ranch and settle down to peace and quiet for the rest of my life. The hope was beautiful. I believed in it. That wild desire to search for joy of life had to be buried. I had been wrong about that. It was only a dream, a boy's dream, on the hope of which I'd spent the manhood of my best years. Ah, it was bitter, bitter to marvel at. I, who had never given in to defeat, but I conquered my regret because I knew I had just mistaken what I wanted. And it was not wholly too late. Wansfeld, you've no idea of the size of the old earth. I've been round it, and that Pacific, oh, what an endless ocean of waters. It seemed eternal like the sky, but at last I got to Frisco. Here Dismukes choked and broke down. The deep rolling voice lost its strength for a moment. He drew a long, long breath that it hurt Adam to hear. Wansfeld, when my feet once more touched land, it was as though I'd really found happiness. Presently went on Dismukes, clearing his throat of huskiness. I was in the clouds. I could have kissed the very dirt, my native land, now for the last leg of the journey, and the little farm, the home to be friends, to make perhaps a sweet-faced woman and a child. Oh, it was glorious as my lost dreams. But then something strange seized hold of me. A hand as strong as the wind gripped my heart. The desert called me. Day and night I walked the streets, fierce as the desert itself. I fought. Oh, I fought my last and hardest fight. On one hand was the dream of my life, the hope of the home and happiness, what I had slaved for, 40 years of toil. On the other hand, the call of the desert, loneliness, solitude, silence, the white-hot days, the starlit nights, the vast open desert, free and peaceful, the gray wastes, the colored mountains, sunrise and sunset. Ah, the desert was my only home. I belonged to the silence and desolation. 40 years a wanderer on the desert, blindly seeking for gold. But oh, it was not gold I wanted, not gold, not fortune. That was my dream, my boyish dream. Gold did not nail me to the desert sands. That was only my idea. That was what brought me into the wasteland. I misunderstood the lure of the desert. I thought it was gold, but no. For me, the desert exists as the burrow for the fox. For me, the desert linked my strange content to the past ages. For me, the soul of the desert was my soul. I had to go back. I could live nowhere else. 40 years. My youth, my manhood. I'm old now, old. My dreams are done. Oh my God, I had to come back. End of chapter 24, part 3.